My name is Matt Johnson, and this is my review and setup tutorial for the Konova Smart Motion controller. I decided to do both the review and the tutorial together because I think it's great to see how you set up the controller and then how shots are taken with it, because that really does give you a good idea of if it is good or not. So I'm going to walk you through the setup of the controller, and as I go through it, I'm going to review it so you can get an idea if this is a piece of gear that you'd like to add to your bag. Now, if you watched my unboxing video, you undoubtedly saw that the gear did not come in this nice box here like this. It actually came in cardboard boxes. And what I found was a Vivitar case with foam on eBay for about 20 bucks. And I'll put a link to that in the description. And it is about ideal for holding all of the Smart Motion controller gear that comes with it. It even comes with foam, so I have everything neatly contained and organized inside this box. The one thing that does not fit in the box is the massive slider that I bought to go with this gear. This is the 150 centimeter Konova rail that I purchased. As you can see, it is much longer than the 80 centimeter rail that I have already. Now, I purchased a new ball head for this slider as well, and I will put a link to it in the description. There is an initial setup you have to do with the Smart Motion controller, but once you get the preliminary setup done, it really only takes about 5 minutes to get it set up and running every time, which is really nice. Especially if you're doing some sort of time crunch thing like needing to get a sunset and you need to get set up quickly. The first thing you're going to want to do is locate the smaller Konova bag. And inside it is the crank pulley handle attachment for it and the belt that will be run. Whenever you order the Smart Motion controller with the bundle, Konova will send you a different belt depending on what size of slider that you have. So I have a 80 centimeter slider, so they sent me an 80 centimeter belt, and a 150 centimeter slider, so they sent me a 150 centimeter belt. It's really nice that you can use different sliders with the Smart Motion controller. The first thing you're going to want to do is set up the crank and pulley system so it can work on your slider. So what you want to do first is take your crank pulley handle here, and what you should have is a tiny Allen wrench. Konova sends a couple different sizes in the bundle. They're all metric, so if you have a metric hex key set, it might be easier just to use one of those in case you lose these things. I have one that has them all attached and it's very useful. But for the sake of this, we'll use what they sent. So what you want to do is take this, and you'll notice, let me get in here close so you can actually see it here. You'll notice there are two little holes in the crank and pulley system. There's one here and there's one here. And what you want to do is stick the little Allen wrench into the hole here. I gotta do this while looking at through the camera viewfinder, that makes it tougher. And unscrew it. And once you do that, you don't have to unscrew it a lot, just enough to loosen it. And then what's gonna happen is that you can actually detach this from this, the actual handle from the part that rotates and attaches to the belt. So you're not gonna need this anymore. So we'll just throw that away. No, I'm just kidding. We'll put that back over here in our container to hold on to it, keep it safe. So the first thing you're going to want to do when setting up your Smart Motion controller is to locate these two little blocks. You already have this one that you took from the crank handle kit, and then you have this other one that clearly has room for the belt and it's all closed off. So you're going to take that and you're going to thread the belt through it. So it's pretty straightforward here. You literally just push the belt through and around, ta-da, pull it on through. And you're gonna repeat that for this little guy here too. So I'm gonna do that really quick. So once you have the belt threaded through this part here and through this part here, you'll notice that you have two ends and these need to go together. Thankfully, that's where this little guy comes in. So if you look here, you loosen these two Allen wrench holes or hex key holes, whatever you want to call them. And these two little screws will then make this spread apart, so it's kind of like a sandwich. Notice how on the inside there are ridges, you can barely tell on this side, and it's flat on this side. So make sure that you're facing the ridged portion of your cable toward this, and then put it into the hole about that far in. Then take the other side here, ta-da, and push it in about that far. So now you've got this nice little sandwich going on. And now you want to tighten up these two screws here with another one of the hex keys that they've given you. So see, you've got hex keys for everything, thankfully. Tighten these down. I'm trying to do it while looking at the camera screen, which is not helpful. Okay, so that's done. And now, ta-da, you have your tightened. And one last little tip here, because I just screwed that up. Make sure that it is facing upward. So if you even do it like this, you should be good. Because the point is that this little screw is gonna go into the little carriage on the track. So you need to make sure that that's right. So we're gonna rethread this here facing the proper direction. I know, I'm sorry. The Smart Motion controller is really great because it works with literally every single Konova slider, because they all have this mounting groove here. So what you're gonna do whenever you put on this track piece here, it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna find this little plastic groove here and you're gonna just slide it in to the track, and it should just slide right into the plastic part. And then you take the little locking arm here and you just tighten it. So you just tighten it down until it is snug all the way up against this segment here. Now you have one side done. Repeat doing the same thing for the other side. As you can see here, your belt is now pretty taut, which is great. Something to keep in mind whenever you're setting up the belt. Make sure that your little metal connector is on the side of the belt closest to the slider, and make sure that it's facing upward. Make sure it's facing upward, so this little screw here is at the top of it. And make sure it is on the side of the slider, the opposite of the side of the Konova logo. On the other side of the carriage is the Konova logo. Make sure it's on the opposite side, because as you can see here, you've got this little screw nub here, and you have a little screw hole here and little holders. So what you're gonna do is that you're gonna actually take it to right here, and then you're gonna screw the screw the carriage into the belt. So now they're attached. So look at this. Now if I pull on the belt, either way, then it moves. Honestly, that is probably the most time-consuming part of this entire setup. That's what took me the most amount of time. Once I got that done, I was like, oh man, this is easy. So congratulations, you have made it past the hard part. The most confusing side is now beyond you, and it's all downhill from here. Well, pretty much. Let's go back over to this side where the rest of the setup will take place. You'll now notice that you just have a bare screw top. What you're gonna wanna do is locate this little guy. It's another belt holder, and that's gonna just go over the top of it and slide down on it. And you've got this other little black piece of aluminum, and that's gonna go over the top of that and screw right in. And now look, whenever I rotate, it's rotating the entire track. Next, you're gonna wanna find this little piece of metal here. And you'll notice that it has this nice little tightening and loosening handle. So what you're gonna wanna do is loosen it. So it's a little loose. And then this is gonna go right over the top of it here. And then you just tighten it down so that it's snug. Make sure that it is lined up with everything else. Now you're ready to put on your Konova motor. Depending on which Konova Smart Motion controller package you ordered, they come with different gearings. Mine is the 2/64th, so you can choose how you want your motor geared depending on how fast you want it to go. First thing, go ahead and unravel all this cord, and it's still attached down here. And then you're gonna want to take this bottom screw here and loosen it pretty loosely here. And then you're gonna take it and you're gonna slide it up over and onto your motor mount here. And then you pull it over, you pull it back so it's tight, and then you tighten it back up so it's locked down. If you don't plan on dismantling your slider and you want to make it more aesthetically pleasing, Konova has included this other metal cover that covers the gearing motor system here, or maybe if it's raining or something like that too, actually. So you put that over, and then you can screw that in, and it makes it look pretty neat and tidy there. And now it's time to really connect the brain of the entire setup, which is this little box here. It doesn't look that big, but it has a lot of connectors on it. You have an Ethernet port for using with the smart head, which I do not have, connection for the camera, connections for the electronic stop, and on the back you have connections for battery power or AC power. You have the motor connector port, and you have the port for the actual controller itself. And the cool thing is that this thing here, you'll notice it has a nice little black plastic part here with a screw, and you can actually mount this to the slider much like you did with the motor. So let's begin connecting things. First of all, you have your motor cable. That's gonna go into the back right here. Notice that does not fit in super far. There still is a gap. That freaked me out a little bit whenever I first saw it. It's fine, it still works, it's great. Next, you're gonna wanna find the controller cable for the actual smart motion controller. Now this has lots of little dots and it's a little pin thing, so make sure you don't bend the pins. It's really hard to bend them, I don't think you will. Stick this in and rotate it around until it slides into place, and it should lock down. So that's now connected. Third, we have our power adapter cable, which is going to run from the battery pack to the control. I don't know what to call this thing, a controller router? I don't know. It kind of reminds me of a router connecting things, but it's for this, so I'm not sure. Power goes into there, and then the last thing you need is your camera cable. Depending on which camera you have, Konova will send you a different camera cable if you have a Canon or a Nikon. What you'll end up with, I have a Canon 7D, and it came with a very thin cable here with an extender. So there's a little extension cable because for the length of the slider. And what you're going to want to do is connect the little headphone-looking jack into the front of it here. And this will go into your camera. Now let's take a small segue here and talk about power. This is the power box brick container that Konova sends out. It's pretty nice because it actually has a carry handle, so if you need to cart it around, you can. It's not that heavy, and if you're wanting, it unzips here, so I'm gonna unzip it so you can see it inside and all. It's actually just a massive plastic battery pack with a DC out on top. It has a belt loop in case you wanted to wear it around like a fashion thing. I don't know why you would, but so to open it up, you pop these two buttons here. There's a button here on the front and a button on the back. You pop them up, and then you have to pull up pretty hard because there is two plugs connected right here. And once you get those disconnected, it pops right off. So then what we have here is, I'm just gonna get rid of the bag entirely here. So what we have now is the battery pack. And this one, Konova makes specific batteries for it, or you can just use standard AA batteries, which is what I've done here. So I have a set of Inteloops I'm gonna put into it, but I haven't run out of the Duracell that I just started using in it. So it holds 6 batteries on one side, 6 batteries on the other, ta-da. It's 6 batteries on the other. It's pretty straightforward, and it's really nice. So it's great to know that if you need batteries, you can just run into a store and get some, and you don't have to worry about having to get certain different specific brand or something like that, or order them special, which shows a lot of foresight from Konova, and that's great. It has different power settings here for switches. I haven't had to mess with it. I'm in America, and I've had it on the 14.8 18V setting, and it's been fine for me. As far as battery use for this thing goes, I have shot around 10 time lapses with it so far and have not needed to change the batteries yet. So probably a good 6 hours of use, and the batteries are still going strong. So it's really great, and it's not like a battery hog or anything like that. Well, for 12 AA's, I would hope not. But the good news is with Inteloops, you buy them once, you can recharge them a lot, and you're good to go. So that is that. Notice the bag has a nice little hole on the top for the cord to go through. So what we're gonna do now is run the power cord from the power router and all that stuff over there into the battery pack. Now it's time for the fun part, using the Smart Motion controller. So you'll notice here on the bottom is a little connection port. It actually has a tripod mount on the top and bottom, so if you wanted to add other things, that's pretty cool. So we're gonna take the big cord, the biggest cord that they send you, and you're gonna plug the cable right in there. I was used to treat it really gingerly, and then I learned that if you just rotate it around and just push, it will go in. So I'm gonna see if I can get this thing in macro so you can really check it out. First of all, power button is here. It's also the enter button, which is cool. You just hold it down for a little bit longer. When you first turn on the power button, this is the menu screen that you will see. Time-lapse, live motion, and settings. The first thing you wanna do is go down to settings and set what kind of motor you have. So hit enter, go down, hit enter again under motor, and change your gear ratio to whichever option you purchased. I purchased the 264, so mine is set to 264. Then you can hit the escape button to go back out. Everything's very easily done. You have literally two buttons, enter to go in and escape to go back, and you have a nice little thumbstick that reminds me of an Xbox controller, which is pretty cool. So back out to the settings here, you have live motion, which actually, whenever you hit enter on that and go in, it gives you slide moves, pan and tilt, and slide, and auto move. Now, if you do not have the pan and tilt head, you won't be able to do pan tilt moves. You're only gonna be able to do slide moves. Still cool though. So if you hit enter on slide move, it'll bring up your slide speed. I don't know what slide RF means. I'm still figuring this out. I'm still figuring this whole thing out, so I don't understand what everything means in it, but by and large, I know how to make a time lapse now, and it's pretty cool. So you're gonna set if you wanna move the slider without actually doing a time lapse or anything like that, say that you want to move it back and forth down the track, you can set your slide speed here all the way up to 100% even, depending on how fast you want it to slide. And then you go down to slide left, so you hit enter, and then if you move left, if you move the thumbstick left, it'll move it left, right, it'll move it right. This is relative to how you have the track set up, but just give it a quick move left to right every single time before you take a time lapse to make sure that you're moving it in the right direction. Now let's go into time lapse, which is what everybody really wants. You have your interval moves, your camera settings, your pan motor settings, and your tilt motor settings. Now, because you do not actually have the pan or tilt motor, or because I don't have the pan and tilt motor, we're limited to the interval move and the camera settings. First, let's go into camera settings, and you can set up the time you're giving it to focus. You have your exposure time, and then you have your shot weight per second. So what I usually do is go in and I will set up every single one of these things here, depending on to coincide with what my camera settings are. So if it's nighttime and I want to do a time lapse of the stars and I want to have a decent ISO setting and all, I might do a 10-second exposure time. So you set that exposure time 10 seconds. Shot weight is how long it waits between shots. This gives your camera enough time to write to the memory card. So I usually have the shot weight, if I'm doing an overnight time lapse, to about 3 seconds on the 7D. But if I had faster cards, I could probably do 1 or 2 seconds. If you're doing a time lapse of the clouds or something like that, you're gonna wanna set your time lapse to the quickest possible, which is 1/30th of a second. Now let's go to interval movement. This is really where you set up the time lapse and have it set up. First of all, you're telling it whether you want it to move left or right on the track. So you can hit enter once you get to there, and then it's gonna bring up your millimeters per frame. F is frame. So 3 3mm per frame or per picture taken. So with it set to 1/264 in the motor settings, I can go up to 7mm per frame. And so you factor that in, and with the length of your slider, you're really gonna need to experiment with this to determine how much length and how many photos you can get out of every single shot, but it's pretty straightforward. So if I was doing a night time lapse, I might do 3mm per photo and have it moving to the right. Then you hit escape and it'll back you out of that option. T-frame is how many photos you're going to take. With 1000 cut, meaning that's whenever it will stop taking pictures at 1000 photos. So you can set it up and you can do all the math for your time lapse and you can say, okay, well once 1000 photos are taken, I'm done with this time lapse. So you can set it to anything that you want in factors of exact, all the way down to the exact number. And it can go way higher than 1000. Interval time is how much time you wanted to spend between every single shot. And I want that usually very low. You can set it to 1 second at the lowest. And so because you already have in your camera settings that you're waiting 2 seconds per shot, with the interval time set to 1 second, it's not gonna affect that and it's gonna be really quick. If you wanted more time between your shots, you could also adjust it here. Lastly, whenever you go down and hit start, you hit enter, this screen's gonna come up. As you can see here, it gives you interval time of only 1 second. So between that and the wait time, it's taking a photo very quickly. It has captured frames, 7, so it's taken 8 photos. TF is how many frames you're gonna be taking this time lapse. So it's taken 2 out of 646 photos. Capture time, CT, is how long the time lapse has been running. So it gives you a good idea if you're like, I wanna be out here for 20 minutes, you can just look at it, which is great. That is how you set up the Smart Motion controller. Once I get a pan and tilt head, I'll be able to show you how to do that too, and that'll be pretty cool. But for now, that's how you do it. I now have my Canon 7D attached to the slider here, as you can see. And we're gonna take the camera cord here that comes with the system and plug it into the 7D there, like so. And then we're gonna back up here a little bit and you're gonna watch how this thing works. Everything's all plugged in, this is powered on, so we're gonna go to time lapse, interval move, we're gonna set it to go to the right, 3mm per frame. We'll leave the rest of those settings the same and hit start. And you can watch it here, it's gonna slowly move and take pictures. I have found the Smart Motion controller to be a great addition to my set of gear, and I am really excited with the time lapses I'm gonna be shooting with it. So I can totally recommend this if you're looking into getting a time lapse rig and you already have a Konova slider, or you're wanting to buy a Konova slider, which is, for the price, one of the cheapest and highest quality. And I've discovered that this Smart Motion controller is the same way. It has allowed me to get a lot more dynamic time-lapse shots, and it is incredibly helpful. If you already have a Konova slider, it's a no-brainer to get this. And if you don't have one, look into getting a Konova slider. And if you like using it after a while, definitely look into getting a Smart Motion controller. I'm really hoping to get to review the pan tilt head in the future as well. So we'll see what happens with that. If you enjoyed this review, please check out my other reviews on whoismatt.com. Thanks.